Most people don't realize how quietly learning dies. It doesn't disappear in a dramatic moment. It fades slowly, the moment a person stops seeing the world with fresh eyes. As children, we approach everything with wonder. Every sound sparks curiosity. Every object becomes a mystery waiting to be understood. But as we age, something inside us hardens. We stop asking questions. We stop observing like explorers. We fall into the trap of assuming we already understand how life works. That shift from curiosity to certainty is subtle, but it's the exact moment growth begins to shrink. In Japan, there is a philosophy that protects the mind from this decline, a philosophy that keeps learning alive, no matter how old, skilled, or experienced you become. It's called Shoshin, the beginner's mind, and it has shaped everyone from Zen monks to sword masters to modern innovators who refuse to stop evolving. Shoshin is not about pretending to know nothing. It's about keeping your mind open enough to see what you would normally overlook. Most people lose this openness because they start identifying themselves with what they already know. They cling to their knowledge as if it is their identity. They defend it, protect it, and refuse to let anything challenge it. But once you anchor your self-worth to what you think you know, you instantly become afraid of appearing ignorant. And that fear kills learning faster than anything else. This is why so many adults stop improving, not because they lack ability, but because they fear looking like beginners again. Shoshin removes that fear. It gives you permission to remain curious, flexible, unafraid of unfamiliar things. It allows you to approach every situation as though it is the first time you are experiencing it, even if you've done it thousands of times before. There is an old Zen story that perfectly illustrates why Shoshin matters. A well-known scholar visited a Zen master, hoping to learn about enlightenment. As soon as he entered the room, the scholar began talking about everything he had studied, everything he had practiced, and everything he believed he already understood. The master listened quietly, then began pouring him a cup of tea. The scholar kept talking, while the master kept pouring, and soon the tea began spilling over the edge of the cup, drenching the table. Shocked, the scholar jumped back and said, "Stop, the cup is overflowing." The master looked at him calmly and replied, "Just like this cup, your mind is full. How can I give you anything new if there is no space left?" That is the essence of Shoshin, a mind that thinks it already knows everything has no room for new ideas. Only the mind that stays empty can be filled again and again. But Shoshin is not only a spiritual idea. Modern science repeatedly proves its power. When a person adopts the beginner's mind, the brain behaves differently. Curiosity increases neural plasticity, allowing the brain to form new connections faster. That means learning becomes easier, adaptation becomes smoother, and creativity becomes more natural. The moment you admit you don't know something, your brain begins searching, absorbing, and reorganizing information. When people cling to certainty, the opposite happens. The brain becomes rigid. It filters out new possibilities because it has already decided what is true. The beginner's mind is like a window that stays open, letting in fresh air. The expert mind is like a window stuck shut, trapping stale air inside. Shoshin keeps your mental windows open, allowing growth to flow in effortlessly. There is a reason the greatest masters across history avoid thinking of themselves as masters. They understand that the moment you start believing you have arrived, you stop moving forward. This principle shaped the greatest innovators and warriors in Japan. Miyamoto Musashi, perhaps the most legendary swordsman in Japanese history, won over 60 duels not because he memorized techniques, but because he constantly reinvented himself. Before each duel, he would revise his approach, question his past strategies, and treat every fight as if he were facing the world for the first time. That attitude made him unpredictable, adaptable, and impossible to read. Even though he was the greatest among his peers, he maintained the posture of a student his entire life. The same attitude can be found in modern figures. Steve Jobs studied Zen philosophy deeply and openly credited the beginner's mind for shaping his approach to innovation. He believed that clinging to assumptions prevents people from seeing new possibilities. Shoshin allowed him to break patterns, question traditions, and find solutions others missed. Bruce Lee built an entire martial arts philosophy around remaining fluid, refusing to get attached to rigid techniques. Japanese craftsmen who spend decades perfecting their art still practice the basics every day, not because they need to, but because doing so keeps their minds fresh. They understand something Western culture often forgets. Mastery is not about accumulating knowledge. Mastery is about maintaining the mindset that keeps learning alive. One of the most fascinating aspects of Shoshin is how simple it seems, yet how difficult it is to embody. The ego constantly fights against it. The ego wants to appear knowledgeable, impressive, superior. It resists anything that makes you look inexperienced. But the irony is that the more you try to appear like an expert, the more you block your own growth. Shoshin is a quiet rebellion against the ego. It allows you to enter a room without needing to be the smartest person in it. It frees you from the pressure of perfection. It makes learning enjoyable again, the way it felt when you were young and unafraid of asking questions. When you live with Shoshin, embarrassment loses its power. Curiosity becomes your guide. In many ways, Shoshin is less about learning and more about unlearning. It's about letting go of old habits, outdated beliefs, and assumptions that no longer serve you. Most of the time, the ideas that limit us are invisible, built silently into our way of thinking. The beginner's mind shines a light on them, exposing what we have been taking for granted. When you return to that state of openness, you realize how much more there is to see. You realize that each moment contains endless possibilities that your old patterns could not recognize. This is why the beginner's mind often leads to breakthroughs, not by giving you new information, but by helping you see old information differently. When you start viewing the world through the lens of a beginner again, something remarkable begins to happen. You start noticing details you used to overlook. Everyday situations begin to feel richer, more alive. Conversations become deeper because you're truly listening instead of waiting for your turn to speak. Even the skills you thought you mastered start revealing layers you never realized were there. This shift feels subtle at first, almost like a mental refresh. But the more you practice it, the more powerful it becomes. It's as if your mind awakens after years of running on autopilot. Suddenly you are aware, attentive, and fully connected to the moment in front of you. This is the real essence of Shoshin, returning the mind to a state of openness, where learning flows naturally instead of feeling forced. The world often celebrates experts, but rarely acknowledges that expertise can turn into a prison. When you see yourself as an expert, you begin to rely on established patterns. You predict instead of observing. You assume instead of exploring. You stop asking why because you believe you already have the answers. Over time, those patterns harden, trapping you inside your own understanding. That's why so many talented people plateau. Their knowledge becomes a wall instead of a foundation. Shoshin breaks that wall down by reminding you that no matter how long you've studied something, you've never seen it from every angle. There is always another perspective, another possibility, another insight waiting to be discovered. The beginner's mind frees you from the identity of expert, allowing you to remain a student forever. One of the most profound aspects of Shoshin is how deeply it influences the way you handle challenges. When you approach a difficult task with the mindset of an expert, you carry a fixed idea of how things should unfold. When reality doesn't match that expectation, frustration follows. You resist, you force, you tighten your grip. But when you approach the same challenge with the mind of a beginner, you respond with curiosity instead of resistance. You become willing to explore different approaches, even if they seem unfamiliar. The challenge becomes a puzzle instead of a threat. This shift from judgment to exploration reduces frustration and increases creativity. Problems don't feel like obstacles anymore. They become invitations to expand your understanding. A person practicing Shoshin doesn't walk into a room thinking, "I already know how this works." They enter with the quiet confidence of someone who understands that knowledge is endless. And ironically, this attitude often makes them learn faster than people who try to protect their self-image. When you're not busy pretending, you can devote all your energy to absorbing what matters. You can ask simple questions without feeling insecure. You can experiment without worrying about failure. And because you're not afraid of looking foolish, you naturally take more risks, try more variations, and discover insights others overlook. The beginner's mind removes the fear of being wrong. which is often the biggest enemy of growth. There's a peaceful freedom that comes with Shoshin. When you give yourself permission not to know everything, you stop carrying the pressure that weighs so heavily on most adults. Suddenly you don't need to have the perfect answer. You don't need to prove your intelligence. You don't need to hide your confusion. You can simply explore. This sense of freedom opens the door to genuine learning, the kind that feels effortless, exciting, and meaningful. You begin to engage with the world not as someone defending their identity, but as someone discovering life again. It's a return to the natural curiosity we are all born with, but often lose along the way. In many Japanese traditions, even the most experienced practitioners intentionally adopt beginner-like exercises to keep their minds flexible. A master calligrapher will sometimes draw basic strokes for hours, not because they lack skill, but because the basics reconnect them to the essence of the craft. A martial artist will revisit simple stances and footwork to remind themselves that mastery is built on fundamentals. This humility is what keeps their skill alive. They don't assume they've outgrown the basics. They recognize that the basics hold infinite depth. When you approach something simple with the eyes of a beginner, you notice qualities you missed before. You discover new subtleties, new patterns, new layers. What once felt ordinary becomes fascinating again. Shoshin also transforms relationships. When you interact with people through the lens of certainty, you judge them quickly. You decide who they are based on first impressions or your own assumptions. But when you greet people with a beginner's mind, you allow them to reveal themselves in ways they never could when you assumed you already knew them. You become more patient, more empathetic, more present. Even people you've known for years start showing you sides of themselves you never noticed. Shoshin creates space for genuine connection by removing the filters that cloud your perception. Another surprising benefit of Shoshin is how it softens the fear of failure. When you approach something as a beginner, failure is expected, so it doesn't scare you. You embrace mistakes as part of the journey instead of treating them as evidence that something is wrong with you. This shift removes the emotional weight that often comes with learning. Instead of giving up at the first sign of struggle, you stay longer, you explore more deeply, you try again without shame. And because you persist with an open mind, your progress becomes steady and sustainable. Shoshin doesn't eliminate failure. It transforms your relationship with it. Even your sense of identity changes when you embody the beginner's mind. Instead of defining yourself by what you already know, you start defining yourself by your willingness to learn. You become someone who evolves, someone who adapts, someone who remains open, even in unfamiliar territory. This flexibility becomes a superpower in a world that constantly changes. Many people are left behind because they cling to old beliefs or outdated knowledge. But the person who lives with Shoshin adapts easily to new information. They are not married to the past. They move fluidly with the present. What makes Shoshin truly powerful is that it's not reserved for any particular discipline. You can bring it into your work, your relationships, your creative pursuits, your hobbies, and your personal development. It's a universal approach to life, not a technique or a strategy. It shifts the way you move through the world in every moment. It trains you to see life with fresh eyes again, as though everything is new and full of potential. The more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, you stop acting like a beginner and start being one, not in skill but in spirit. Once you begin living with Shoshin, the world begins to mirror the openness in your mind. You notice opportunities that once passed unnoticed. Tasks that once felt daunting start to feel like experiments. You engage with life without clinging to outcomes or rushing to judgment. Each moment becomes a lesson, each mistake a teacher. You begin to understand that mastery is not a destination, but a state of perpetual curiosity. The process itself becomes the reward, and in that reward, a deeper satisfaction takes root. A satisfaction that comes from knowing you are fully alive and fully present in the pursuit of growth. In this state, learning stops being a struggle and becomes a natural rhythm, almost like breathing. You no longer consume knowledge to prove something to yourself or to others. Instead, you absorb, question, and apply. You feel the joy of discovery without attaching it to external validation. You start seeing the hidden patterns in everyday life, the way a skilled craftsman moves, the subtle strategies in a conversation, the invisible physics of motion around you. Your mind becomes alive to nuances previously invisible, and you realize that what once seemed ordinary is actually extraordinary when viewed without preconceived filters. Shoshin doesn't mean you ignore experience or wisdom, it means you don't let them cage you. The lessons of the past are tools, not chains. The knowledge you've accumulated isn't a barrier, it's a foundation to spring from. Like a warrior practicing in the courtyard, you respect the forms, but you remain open to improvisation and insight. You move with discipline, but your mind is free. You approach every challenge with humility, yet carry the confidence that you can learn anything if you give yourself permission to start as a beginner. The beauty of this philosophy is how it transforms not just what you do, but who you are. A beginner's mind softens pride and cultivates patience. You start treating yourself with compassion, understanding that growth requires time, effort, and mistakes. Every misstep becomes a stepping stone, every failure a guidepost pointing toward understanding. You stop fearing embarrassment or judgment because your focus is no longer on how others perceive you, but on how fully you are engaging with life. And in that engagement, a quiet, steady power grows, a power that doesn't announce itself, but that is undeniable to those around you. When Alexander discovered Shoshin, it was more than just a concept, it was a lifeline. He realized that every skill he ever wished to master, every dream he thought was too late to pursue, was within reach if he approached it as a true beginner. Suddenly, learning physics, mastering new mechanics, or understanding financial principles was no longer intimidating. He didn't need to be perfect, and he didn't need to rush. Each small, deliberate effort compounded over time, revealing results he never imagined possible. And with each small victory, his confidence grew, not arrogance, but a quiet assurance that persistence and curiosity always yield results. One of the most powerful lessons of Shoshin is how it reshapes your relationship with time. In a world obsessed with speed and instant gratification, the beginner's mind teaches patience. It teaches that profound transformation doesn't happen overnight. Real change, the kind that reshapes your character and your life, is a slow, steady unfolding. Each day becomes a canvas, each hour a brushstroke, each effort an investment in your future self. You learn to honor the process, to trust in the accumulation of small, consistent actions. And when you finally look back, you are astonished by how far you've come, not because you sprinted, but because you never stopped moving. This mindset also creates resilience. Life is unpredictable, and circumstances rarely align perfectly. Without Shoshin, adversity can feel like a wall, immovable and overwhelming. But with a beginner's mind, obstacles become puzzles. You approach challenges with curiosity, asking what can be learned rather than what has been lost. You experiment, adapt, and iterate. Failures no longer shake you to the core, they guide you toward improvement. The confidence that arises from this mindset is unlike any superficial bravado. It is born of experience, of repeated engagement with the unknown, and of the quiet knowledge that no matter what life presents, you can always learn, adapt, and grow. Shoshin doesn't just teach you how to learn, it teaches you how to live. It teaches presence, it teaches awareness, it teaches the courage to step into the unknown without ego, to embrace mistakes without shame, and to remain endlessly curious about the world and yourself. Every interaction becomes a lesson, every skill becomes a journey, every challenge becomes an opportunity. You are no longer tethered to the illusions of certainty or perfection. You are free to explore, to experiment, and to expand. Even the simplest actions transform under the lens of a beginner's mind. Preparing a meal becomes an exploration of taste, texture, and technique. Walking through a familiar street becomes an observation of patterns, movement, and energy. Reading a book becomes a conversation rather than a passive activity. The ordinary turns extraordinary when you approach it with openness, curiosity, and humility. Life itself becomes a practice, a dojo where every day, every moment, every experience is a chance to learn. And then there is the profound effect on your relationships. When you approach others with the humility and curiosity of a beginner, you open doors to connection that were previously closed. You listen without judgment. You ask questions without ego. You learn from everyone, from the youngest apprentice to the most seasoned master. Walls of pride and preconception crumble. people respond to your presence with authenticity because they feel seen and respected. In this way, Shoshin transforms not just your personal growth, but your ability to foster trust, empathy, and deep understanding in the world around you. Finally, the beginner's mind is a shield against stagnation. It is what allows you to remain alive, vibrant, and ever-growing. Without it, even the most intelligent, skilled, or experienced person can fall into complacency. With it, even someone starting from zero can achieve mastery over time. Every skill, every art, every craft, every discipline becomes accessible when approached with openness and curiosity. The limits that once seemed insurmountable dissolve when you allow yourself to be a perpetual student, a lifelong learner, a seeker of understanding. The key, then, is to embrace both humility and confidence simultaneously. Humility, because you are always learning and there is always more to understand. Confidence, because no matter how small your beginning, your efforts, if consistent and deliberate, will yield mastery. This delicate balance is what separates those who remain stagnant from those who transform their lives. It is what allows ordinary people to achieve extraordinary results. It is the secret that centuries of Zen masters, samurai, and philosophers have known, and that neuroscience today is confirming. Every morning you wake up, you have a choice. You can cling to certainty, defend what you think you know, and retreat behind the walls of expertise. Or you can adopt the mindset of Shoshin, step into the day with openness, curiosity, and courage, and allow life to teach you. Each choice compounds over time. Each small act of learning, reflection, and experimentation strengthens your mind, your body, and your spirit. And eventually, those incremental efforts accumulate into profound transformation, a life lived with purpose, clarity, and infinite possibility. As you continue on this path, you realize that Shoshin is not a technique, it is a lifestyle, it is a rhythm, a way of perceiving the world that transforms every moment into a lesson, every challenge into an opportunity, every failure into insight. Life itself becomes your dojo, and you are the student who never graduates. The power of this mindset is subtle, almost imperceptible at first. You do not feel it rushing through your veins or announcing itself loudly to the world. Instead, it grows quietly, persistently, like roots spreading beneath the surface, anchoring you, nourishing you, and preparing you to weather any storm. In practical terms, the beginner's mind changes the way you approach every task. A simple workout is no longer just a routine, it is a laboratory for learning the limits and potential of your body. Studying a subject is no longer a chore, it is a conversation with the universe where each question you ask uncovers deeper truths. Learning a skill is no longer about immediate results, it is about the cumulative effect of consistent practice, the quiet power of improvement that compounds silently over days, weeks, months, and years. You stop fearing mistakes because you understand that every error is an essential teacher, guiding you toward mastery in ways success never could. The beginner's mind also restores a kind of innocence, a clarity of vision that adults rarely experience. You stop seeing the world only through the lens of past experiences and judgments. You observe without filtering, without assuming, without defending. You approach each situation as if it is entirely new, allowing fresh perspectives to emerge naturally. And with this openness comes creativity, insight, and the ability to innovate in ways that rigid expertise cannot imagine. You begin to see solutions where others see obstacles. You perceive patterns and connections where others see only noise. You respond to challenges with fluidity and grace because your mind is not constrained by preconceptions or fear. In relationships, Shoshin teaches you to truly listen, to hear not just the words, but the intention, the emotion, the subtle currents beneath the surface. You engage with others without judgment, without ego, without the need to prove yourself. You ask questions, remain curious, and allow others to teach you even when they are younger, less experienced, or entirely different from you. This humility fosters trust and deep connection. People sense your authenticity, your willingness to learn from them, and they respond with openness. The bonds you form are not transactional, they are rooted in shared understanding, mutual respect, and the recognition that every interaction is an opportunity for growth. Even as you gain skill, mastery, and confidence, Shoshin keeps you grounded. You never stop learning, You never stop questioning. You never stop evolving. The day you believe you have arrived is the day growth ceases. But with a beginner's mind, there is no arrival, only continuous discovery. You remain open to new techniques, new ideas, new perspectives. You embrace feedback as a gift rather than a threat. You treat failure as data rather than defeat. And you cultivate patience, knowing that the process is far more important than immediate outcomes. Modern science validates what the Zen masters have known for centuries. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new connections, remains active throughout life, but it is activated only when we approach learning with curiosity, focus, and the courage to make mistakes. When you adopt Shoshin, your brain enters a state of heightened receptivity. You notice patterns faster, you retain knowledge more deeply, you adapt with agility. Age, previous experience, and perceived limitations no longer define your capacity. What matters is your willingness to remain humble, present, and engaged with the world as a perpetual learner. The paradox of Shoshin is both delicate and powerful. You must maintain humility, accepting that you do not know, while simultaneously carrying the confidence that you can master anything. This duality, the soft strength of curiosity and the firm assurance of your potential, is what allows extraordinary transformation. Humility keeps your mind open, curiosity keeps your spirit alive, and confidence ensures that you continue even when the path is uncertain. In this balance, you find a rare kind of freedom, a freedom that allows you to pursue growth relentlessly, without fear, without hesitation, without the weight of ego. As your journey unfolds, you see the ripple effects. Your body strengthens, your mind sharpens, your relationships deepen, and your purpose clarifies. Challenges no longer paralyze you. They become invitations to learn. Failures no longer break you. They become stepping stones toward mastery. Life becomes a series of lessons, a series of experiments, a canvas on which you continuously paint the portrait of your evolution. And as you embrace this path, you realize the truth that Zen masters and samurai understood long ago. Mastery is not the accumulation of trophies, wealth, or accolades. Mastery is the cultivation of the self, the quiet development of skill, presence, and character, guided by an insatiable curiosity and a willingness to be forever a student. In the end, the Japanese secret to infinite learning is deceptively simple: remain a beginner, always. Let Shoshin guide your steps. Let curiosity outweigh certainty. Let humility temper confidence. Engage with the world as a perpetual student, and life will teach you what no textbook, course, or mentor ever could. Every day offers a new lesson. Every person offers a new perspective. Every challenge offers an opportunity to grow. In this way, the journey never ends, and the possibilities are truly infinite. If you choose to live this way, to embody Shoshin in every action, every thought, every decision, you will become unstoppable. Not because life will suddenly be easier, but because your mind will be sharpened, your spirit resilient, and your heart open. You will move through challenges with clarity and calm. You will act with purpose and presence. You will transform not just what you do, but who you are. You will become a master, not of the external world, but of yourself. And this mastery, silent and profound, will shape every aspect of your existence. If this message spoke to you, subscribe to the Zen Warrior. Be calm, be strong, be present.